Hello, I'm Waqar Rizvi, and this is Scope. In Bangladesh, a campaign of violence against the opposition in the lead-up to general elections is picking up pace. The UN and even an election commissioner of Bangladesh have questioned the elections being free and fair, adding to a chorus of concerned voices. Is Bangladesh heading towards a one-party state? How democratic is present-day Bangladesh? Let's discuss these issues a bit further. We're joined now by Mr. Shahidul Islam Chaudhry, who is the special correspondent for The New Age, and he's joining us live now from Dhaka. We're also joined now by Professor Afsan Chaudhry, who is a professor at BRAC University, and he's joining us live now from Dhaka as well. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us. Afsan, if I may, I'd like to start with you. What do you make of the concerns about how free and fair these elections on December 30th will be?
In fact, we are yet to proceed to create a congenial atmosphere for free and fair elections, as we are yet to proceed for 10 more days, in fact, a week, to allow the opposition and other candidates to campaign properly. So far, I understand the situation is not conducive for free and fair election right now.
And so why have these conditions right now been created in this fashion? Is this an effort by the Awami League to remain in power, do you think?
It's usual that Awami League will try to remain in power. The problem is that the opposition is the multiple options, or I should say the points that created uncongenial climate for elections, because 16 candidates are in jail and 13 constituencies are now out of candidate for the opposition parties, and the opposition parties claim that they cannot continue their campaign because of attacks from the ruling Awami League activists, and with support from the police. And they are demanding to the Election Commission and the government for creating a conducive atmosphere.
Afsan, what do you make of the fact that even the election commissioner, Mahbub Talukder, has said that there is no level playing field for these elections on December 30th? Do you agree with that?
Well, I have been observing elections for the last 40 years at least, and I think the situation is more about politics rather than the election itself. The election has become quite an intense affair, with both parties taking very strong positions, more like, well, this is the election that will matter. And I would personally say it is the most intense election we have seen in a very, very long time. We haven't seen too many elections, and this election is being held after almost 18 years. So obviously that issue is also there. But politically, of course, there is much more violence. And that violence is structural. I think South Asia itself is experiencing violence in almost all sectors. So the election commissioner or the election commission is always limited in South Asian countries, except in India. In Bangladesh, of course, I wouldn't call them to be less effective than they were 5 years back, less effective than they were 10 years back. It's been roughly what it is. But the issue is more about politics rather than the elections itself.
Okay, so
that is where the...
But then, you say that the issue is more about politics, Afsan, but certainly the two intermingle, though, don't they? Because we're talking about the right of citizens to be able to vote in free and fair elections and to choose as they so wish, regardless of what their specific political views may be. Do you think that in some ways that the BNP or other opposition are being limited to even be able to have that free exercise, to be able to freely exercise that right?
Well, the political situation is such that the current opposition party had not participated in the election in 2014. So they were outside the electoral space. And in that period, they have lost a large part of their party structure or mechanism, whatever you will. So they have to come back. Meantime, the government also sees no reason why it should relent and give away an election or something. Therefore, both parties are coming in from two different positions. and they have to build on that. But the last 10 years has seen considerable growth and development by the current political government. Against that, the opposition really cannot claim that much. But on the other hand, the anti-incumbency factor, of course, is also working. So together, it's creating an environment for a very intense election. The Election Commission has also said that violence has become part of the political structure. Perhaps that is something one needs to ponder much more, whether political structure is strong enough or not. Administrative structure is probably more strong than the political structure, which is one of the reasons why people are feeling more confident that if the army comes in a couple of times, things will quieten down. Right now, the police is in charge, but then the government is also saying that there is a conspiracy by the opposition to kill police. I really don't think whether these claims are true or not. I don't know. But what I do feel is that there's a great deal of hostility in politics in Bangladesh, as it is in elsewhere. And I think that is motivating a lot of anxiety. People are not that much involved in politics. People are much more interested in having a peaceful politics rather than a political.
Okay, so that's a good point you just made there, Afsan. Shahidul Islam, what do you make of? You agree that people genuinely just want, and obviously it's natural that they want peaceful politics in their country. And do you think that the army possibly, because I believe the army will get involved in providing security from December 24th onwards till the elections, do you think that will be a positive move, Shahidul Islam?
Yes, in Bangladesh and everywhere else, people in general want peaceful climate for elections so that they can cast their vote. So Bangladesh is not different. On questions of army, yes, presence of army as a striking force or in whatever capacity, I think will create some impression among the people and some expectation as well. But we are yet to see to what extent they would be allowed to play a role. Either generally they will remain under the returning officer and assistant returning officers, so they will carry instructions from the election management.
Okay, so how do you feel about the involvement of the army, Afsan? Because, you know, certainly till what I've understood right now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it seems that everybody is on board to say that this would be overall a positive thing. And I know that the BNP is the one that pushed for this the hardest.
The army's influence will be about what kind of impression it has on public mind. The opposition thinks it will be good. People think it is good, and I think the government also thinks it's good. Because if the army has always come in at the last 1 week before elections, they may also stay on for another week after elections. They give an impression of being solid, but of course the power remains with the returning officers. They do not have magisterial powers, and that is important. But I think the impression of the army, which is usually away from people, the police are close to people, so that will have a positive impact. But they are not going to go around trying to, establish law and order or anything. I think they will have more like, if they want to take any action, they will have to take orders from the magistracy. So that kind of balancing is also being attempted. Obviously, the influence is more social, more perceptional. People will think that, okay, the army is here, we can't go around doing something. But that's how it is going to move. I think we will have an election which may not be as peaceful as the ones we had maybe in 2008 or even in earlier, but we will certainly have it closer to something which was happening in 2014 when there was no election. This is going to be better than having no election. And that election is something. People would rather have the election and move on. That attitude in Bangladesh seems to be more, rather than the politicians who would like an election. That is their business, to have elections, while people's business is to go on with their lives, social and economic.
As with any other country around the world, in Bangladesh, social media plays a very important role in how elections work out as well. And Facebook and Twitter have announced that they've removed upwards of 30 accounts, fake accounts, they've said. And they've claimed, at least Facebook has claimed, that those accounts were linked to the government. which were fake news accounts. So, for example, they were faking accounts such as BBC Bangla or bdnews24.com and were spewing rhetoric which was against the opposition. What do you make of that situation, Afsan, and the role, then again, of the government in all of this?
Well, I've seen the news. I've covered that. The accounts belong to both government supporters and opposition supporters. It's not like they were run by the government of Bangladesh. Could be government supporters. They could be, but there are certainly opposition supporters were there as well. So as the Facebook says, which is fine, which is something which is almost certain to happen. I mean, in this age of social media, that is going to dominate. Even now in Bangladesh, politics is happening on social media. The politicians' politics is happening on the streets maybe, but ordinary people's political space is social media. So obviously all kinds of things are coming out. Fake news, fake allegations, a dime a dozen. People do not take them that seriously. We have a huge underground media which says everything possible, and a lot of it is actually located outside the country. So it's probably outside the purview of the government agencies to shut them down even. So it happens, and after a point of time you start noticing them less. But yes, of course, it's going to be very active. And there are lots of media which are not being banned, which are producing twisted news, not necessarily fake news, twisted news. And somebody has to complain about the fake news before it is shut down. The government has actually shut down the opposition's website, and they shut down 54 such outlets, saying that they were producing news. Yes, it was. I think the opposition does not underestimate the power or the strategy of the government, which is to make life as uncomfortable as possible. The same thing which the opposition did in 2014, mounting street movements, trying to make the government as uncomfortable as possible. It's something between two political parties rather than between people and political parties. I think that is a position that many people increasingly take about the distance between political parties and the people. It's not a question of which one you support. It's also a question of which element you want to be involved with.
But I mean, if to be fair though, Afsan, if I may, in this specific case, the opposition is significantly weakened, though, isn't it, going into these elections? Considering the basics such as Khaleda Zia being in jail, not being able to contest these elections, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, in such a climate, the government's essentially, people would argue, I imagine, that the government's essentially ensuring just one-party rule at this point.
No. There's no question of one-party rule here. Because you are having 2 parties, 10 parties, God knows how many. There are 2 fronts. There are far too many political parties jostling for power. They are very small-time parties, and there are only 2 major political parties in Bangladesh: the government party and the opposition party. The rest are clustering around these 2 political parties. There's no element of one-party rule. If anything, if the kind of clout and Sheikh Hasina is obviously the strongest prime minister Bangladesh has ever seen. And she has not achieved it by, having a one party. She's having it, making life very difficult for all other parties. All other parties must learn that, what she has done. She has used legal means, and she has actually produced achievements. I'm currently writing a UN report, and Bangladesh's achievements are extremely high. It's much more than in any of the regional countries in many of the sectors. Hasina is selling that. She's going around saying, look, this is what I did. This is what I did. Which is where the weakness of the opposition is. That they've been out of power for 10 years. If they were in power, if they had a share of the legal electoral system, they could have claimed something. But they're not there. So they have become outsiders. Marginalization in politics is dangerous. And this is what they are. If they get into the parliament, and I hope they do, and we have a strong opposition, things will get better for them. Rather than staying away and trying to mount, trying to call upon people and to overthrow the government, which they did in 2014 and which didn't work. So this is why I think everyone needs to recognize that. Legal means are the only means that work in politics.
Okay, so Shahidul Islam, I want to agree with that. Do you think that, yes, we can obviously talk about the economic achievements of this government, but do you think that all the means that have been used to achieve all of this have been legal and that the opposition has been given a fair chance throughout? What do you make of the way that the Sheikh Hasina government has governed, really, the country throughout this time, Shahidul Islam?
Yeah, yes, on political and excluding political issues. In fact, on economic and social issues, there are tremendous progress we see. People are enjoying. In fact, in Bangladesh, people are very much entrepreneurial and they are doing things, very much tremendous things. Yes. But on questions of political rights, I think the government is yet to allow a full open space for its opposition. So this election will be a test for both the ruling Awami League, led by Sheikh Hasina, and the opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party. If this two-party continues to contest the December 30 polls, I think situation will improve. In fact, with seeing two major political parties in the parliament. So, since we are a very much political nation, I think politics would dominate the next development discourse.
Let me ask you a very blunt question, Shahid al-Islam. I'm going to ask the same question to Afsan as well. Do you think, Shahid al-Islam, that Bangladesh needs to move away from just these two women, Khaleda Zia and Sheikh Hasina, and that it needs new leadership?
In fact, there is no clear political leadership in Bangladesh right now, beyond Sheikh Hasina and Khaleda Zia. No third political party or political leader is dominant here to contest or to remove these two ladies. I think they will continue for some couple of years to lead the political sphere in Bangladesh.
And Afsan, the same question. Do you think we need to move beyond Zia and Hasina?
But obviously, more and more people should come in, young people should come in. Young people are coming in. And in fact, the pitch of both parties is towards young people and women have become extremely active. Bangladesh is doing extremely work in the gender sector, which all means there is a greater participation of women in both life.
All right, very well, gentlemen. With that as our final word then, but we appreciate the insight and the context you both have brought to this discussion. And that was Shahid al-Islam Chaudhry, a special correspondent of The New Age, who was speaking to us live from the Bangladeshi capital, Dhaka. And we were also joined by Afsan Chaudhry, who's a professor at BRAC University, and he was also speaking to us live from Dhaka as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as our viewers, as our guests, I should say, spoke about there, Bangladesh is obviously going through a very tense period in the lead up to these specific elections on December 30th. The UN has its concerns, even election commissioner has his concerns as well. We know that opposition activists have been jailed. Some of them, they have their candidacies removed by a court. We'll have to wait and see, of course, whether these elections will be free and fair, as have been promised by the government, and what happens after those elections, after the army also gets involved in providing security in the country. Keep a very close eye on all those developments here in The Scope. Stay with us, though. We'll be back after this short break with our next segment.